Right now, you're watching Our Time in the Studio with Carolina Carol. I welcome the viewers of Freedom. Let's get straight to the important news. Ukraine and Russia have carried out their 72nd prisoner exchange, the second one this year. 200 Ukrainians have returned home, as President Volodymyr Zelenskyy announced. Among them are servicemen from the Navy, the ground forces, the territorial defense forces, the drone systems forces, the air assault forces, as well as the National Guard of Ukraine, the State Border Guard Service, and the State Special Transport Service. These people defended the country in the Donetsk, Luhansk, Kharkiv, and Zaporizhia directions. Among those released are also defenders of Mariupol, who had been held by the Russians for almost 4 years. In addition to soldiers and sergeants, officers were also freed. Well, we'll learn more details about the exchange from our guest later in the broadcast. Irina Krenina is joining us, a representative of the public movement for the search of Russian army servicemen. We're on air. Irina, welcome to the Freedom Broadcast.
Hello. Wow.
So this was the second prisoner exchange since the beginning of this year. As I already mentioned, 200 for 200. Let's start with how this exchange took place in general. What details are you able to reveal to us at this point?
Well, this exchange was carried out in the usual manner. The prisoners of war, Russian POWs, were brought from 5 different camps to the Chernihiv assembly point. Then we meet with them, call their relatives, and talk with them. After that, we head to the border with the Republic of Belarus. We wait for the signal when the Russian side gives the go-ahead that we can proceed. And the buses with Russian prisoners of war, they head to the border. That's where the prisoner exchange takes place. We wait for the Ukrainians to return, and that's it. And then we announce the good news that, yes, the exchange really did happen. Today was the first stage of the 200 for 200 exchange, and tomorrow, if nothing gets postponed or falls through, we expect a 300 for 300 exchange.
Of course, we still hope and expect that everything will go as planned. I want to discuss a rather difficult topic with you. What condition are they in when they returned? You've seen Ukrainian and Russian POWs, right? Any big difference in their condition, given their treatment?
I can't say that I spoke with Ukrainian prisoners of war. I saw them from a distance. And I can't speak to their condition. But the Russian prisoners of war are in fairly good condition. Of course, there are prisoners who are seriously wounded, and some have amputations. There was one prisoner who was diagnosed with cancer. He lost a lot of weight, about 18 kilograms, and he needs urgent surgery. And I'm very glad that he was included in the exchange, and I hope he'll get the help he needs. As for the length of captivity, I heard that some Ukrainians were held as prisoners for up to 4 years. From a total of 200 Russian prisoners of war, 175 were captured in the year 2025. So they spent less than a year in captivity.
Yes, Irina, Ukraine abides by the Geneva Conventions and respects the rights of prisoners of war. Unfortunately, Ukrainian prisoners of war often return in much worse condition. More often, and you can see this in the materials available online, on social media. There's a clear difference before and after captivity. But I think this issue is known not only to Ukrainians, but also to our viewers all over the world. Is there any data on how many Russians, after returning, sign contracts again and go back to fighting in the war against Ukraine? I know that there are definitely such people. What motivates them to do that? After all, by now they must clearly understand that this is a war of aggression against another country and that they're fighting against civilians, including that.
The thing is, after returning from captivity, they don't sign new contracts. The contract they signed before being captured? After they return from captivity, that contract is still in effect. And absolutely no one asks them whether they truly want to go back to war or not. Government officials and the military leadership do everything they possibly can to send them right back to the front lines of the war. And here, it really depends on the wishes of the exchanged person themselves, on how active their relatives are, and whether they hire military lawyers or attorneys. It also depends on their health condition. So it directly depends on the former POW themselves, what steps they take to avoid going back to war. And
How do you join the swap list? What should Russian POW families do? Because our viewers, of course, are watching from far beyond Ukraine. In fact, our main target audience and most of our viewers are outside of Ukraine. There are also, of course, Russians among them. That's why I think this information will be important for them. How many requests actually come in from the Russian side? What percentage of those requests actually end up resulting in an exchange?
look, the most important thing for Russian relatives, or really for any relatives, is to have their loved one recognized as a prisoner of war. If they are officially given prisoner of war status, then they are automatically added to the exchange lists. And the chances that they'll be included in the next exchange are much higher than if they have a different status. There are missing persons, and there are prisoners of war who are listed as deceased or as MIA. So the first thing to do is to change their status to prisoner of war. Then, once they have the formal official documentation, they can contact the Ministry of Defense, the specific unit where their loved one serves, various human rights commissioners, local and national media outlets, governors, or the mayor. Alternatively, they can reach out to political activists to help ensure their loved one is included in a future prisoner of war exchange program. As for the number of applications, just recently, I want to find it, there was something. The record number of applications is a staggering 180,000 for the entire project, and with every passing month, it increases by an additional 200,000 new applications. And out of all these applications, only 2% of prisoners of war have been found, and that 2% already includes those who have been exchanged.
Thank you, Irina, for being with Freedom today. Irina Krenina was with us, a representative of the public movement for the search of Russian army soldiers. That's our segment. Over the past day in Donetsk region, 2 people were killed and 5 more were injured due to Russian shelling. This was reported by the head of the regional military administration, Vadim Falashkin. Police recorded 1,360 strikes along the front line and in residential areas. 8 settlements in the region came under fire from Russian occupiers. 46 civilian objects were destroyed, including 38 residential buildings. The enemy dropped a 500-kilogram bomb on Kostyantynivka. 2 people were killed in the strike. A 5-story building was also destroyed. Russia attacked a civilian foreign vessel in the Black Sea. A drone struck it as it was leaving the port of Chornomorsk. This was reported by the Odessa Regional Military Administration. The vessel was sailing under the Panamanian flag and was carrying corn. There are injured crew members. They received the necessary assistance and were evacuated. A non-operational recreation base in the region also came under Russian shelling. Several buildings caught fire and civilian vehicles were damaged. A Russian drone attacked railway infrastructure in the Dnipropetrovsk region. While a freight train was moving, the drone struck the electric locomotive. The injured train drivers and their assistants received prompt medical assistance. This was reported by the Ministry of Community and Territorial Development. The agency emphasized that attacks on transport infrastructure and shipping are a continuation of Russia's terror campaign against civilian logistics, as well as an attempt to undermine Ukraine's economy and global food security. The Russian army continues to attack Ukraine's energy sector. Some communities in the Zaporizhia, Dnipropetrovsk, and Kharkiv regions. The areas are without power due to hostilities and enemy shelling of energy infrastructure. This was reported by the Ministry of Energy and Ukrenergo. Where the security situation allows, repair crews have already started restoring electricity supply. Russia continues to terrorize the civilian population of Ukraine. The enemy strikes every day, not only at frontline settlements, but also at regions in the rear. At the beginning of March, near Kryvyi Rih, a strike drone deliberately attacked a suburban train. More than a dozen passengers were injured, and 1 person was killed. In Nikopol, a Russian FPV drone struck a civilian car. Another drone hit a 5-story apartment building. Watch my colleague Natalia Husak's report on Russian crimes against Ukrainian civilians.
Alexander, a father of 8, is already on the mend. Doctors managed to save his left arm. They literally pieced the bone together from fragments. The man suffered about 10 fractures. A Russian drone struck right next to him.
It started flying over us. They started hitting us a bit, as they say. 2 flew by, and the 3rd one hit.
Alexander's family lives near Nikopol. This area is under constant attack. Russian forces fire from the opposite bank of the Dnieper River. They target civilian infrastructure, residential buildings, and vehicles. A security camera captured the moment an FPV drone struck a parked car. And in this footage, you can see the drone flying straight into a 9-story building. Drones are also dropping munitions on the city.
Today, there was such a drop in the historic old part of our city, so we ask that you please be careful.
During today, on March 2nd, a Russian drone struck a passenger train in the Kryvyi Rih district. As a result, 1 person died at the scene and 10 others were injured. The frontline settlement of Mezheva is also under daily attacks. On the night of March 1st, as a result of an attack in Pividroni, a 56-year-old man was killed. He had moved to the Dnipropetrovsk region from Pokrovsk in search of a safer place to live.
We're heading to Mykolaiivka for an evacuation.
With each passing day, it's becoming more dangerous in the frontline town of Mykolaiivka, Donetsk region. Russian forces are relentlessly attacking residential neighborhoods with bombs and all types of drones. The roads leading to the city are constantly under enemy surveillance.
Right now, it's extremely dangerous in the city. Every 5 to 10 minutes, there are drone strikes. There are lots of loitering munitions, fiber optic drones, and FPV drones.
Despite all this, there are still civilians remaining in the city. Police strongly urge families with children to leave and are helping with the evacuation. They emphasize that staying in Mykolaiivka is getting more dangerous every day.
A few days ago, an FPV drone struck a car carrying civilians who were on their way to work in the city of Mykolaiivka. As a result, 2 power plant workers were killed.
Druzhkivka is under constant attack. On March 2nd, Russian forces struck the city with several glide bombs and FPV drones. 3 residents were killed and 17 were injured. I'm telling you.
What can you even say about that?
There's just one there, right? Here, an apartment building was destroyed and several cars were wiped out. Police officers, rescue workers, and other specialists are working at the scene, inspecting the site of the shelling, assisting residents, and documenting yet another war crime committed by the Russians.
According to data from the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, as of February 13, 2026, more than 15,000 civilians have been killed in Ukraine as a result of Russian aggression. Over 41,000 people have been injured, including children, women, and the elderly. Natalia Gusso, Volodymyr Shtengelov for Freedom TV channel.
The Ukrainian Navy destroyed a Russian Ka-27 ship-based anti-submarine helicopter. According to the Ukrainian Navy, it was shot down over the Black Sea. Meanwhile, Special Operations Forces carried out a series of strikes on Russian military logistics facilities in temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine. In particular, the area where the S-400 surface-to-air missile system is based in Orlovka on the territory of annexed Crimea was hit, as well as 4 warehouses and a repair base in the Donetsk region. Ukraine's defense forces struck the Russian frigate Admiral Essen in the port of Novorossiysk, according to freedom sources in the Security Service of Ukraine, SBU. On the night of March 2nd, the Russian frigate, which carried 8 Caliber cruise missiles, came under attack. The strike hit the ship's central superstructure. The systems for launching decoy flares and dispersing radio signal jammers were disabled. The electronic warfare system was damaged, the target elimination radars were destroyed, and likely the main surveillance radar as well. Fire crews were unable to extinguish the blaze for almost 18 hours, which indicates serious destruction inside the ship. Currently, the frigate is unable to launch Caliber cruise missiles at Ukrainian territory, as noted by the SBU. Over the course of 3 winter months, Ukraine's defense forces eliminated more than 92,000 Russian soldiers, with almost 89,000 of them taken out using drones. This was reported by Ukraine's Minister of Defense, Mikhailo Fedorov. And according to his information, Ukrainian forces eliminated 27,313 Russian occupiers in February alone. On average, that amounted to 975 invaders per day. In addition, Ukraine's defense forces set a new record for destroying enemy drones. Over 3 months, more than 15,000 UAVs were shot down over Ukraine, including at the front lines. The effectiveness of Ukraine's air defense has been increasing for the second month in a row, Fedorov noted. Iranian drones attacked an international airport in Azerbaijan. This was reported by the country's Ministry of Defense. One drone crashed directly into the airport terminal, and another landed near a school. In the village of Shekarabad, 2 people were injured as a result of the attack. Azerbaijan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs condemned the incident. The ministry also demanded explanations from Tehran regarding the reason for the attack and called for such incidents to be avoided in the future. The Azerbaijani Ministry of Defense reserves the right to take retaliatory measures. A note of protest will be delivered to the Iranian ambassador in Baku. This is the first time Iranian drones have crashed on Azerbaijani territory. On the night of March 5th, Iran carried out 3 waves of missile strikes on Israeli territory. Air raid sirens sounded in Jerusalem and several central regions of the country. Information about damage and casualties is still being clarified at this stage. You can't trust the words of the Russian dictator Putin when he says that if Ukraine leaves Donbass, the war will end. On the contrary, Putin will only continue. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy said this in an interview with Rai Italia. Volodymyr Zelenskyy emphasized that Ukraine is ready to try to negotiate an end to the war with strong mediators, but the conditions must be such that they don't simply rely on Russia's words.
Some people around the world have suddenly started to believe Putin's claim that if Ukraine withdraws from Donbass, the war will end. Despite all the previous statements coming out of the Kremlin, their aggression has only intensified. That's why we simply can't trust the Russian side. Why should we abandon our own territory, which we still control? Putin couldn't achieve success on the battlefield because he doesn't have the strength. He wants us to believe him and just walk away from our well-fortified positions. These fortifications limit the capabilities of Russian troops. Putin understands that if we pull back, he'll save anywhere from 300,000 to 1 million of his soldiers, depending on the intensity and duration of offensive actions in Donbass. Why should we trust him and give him such gifts? Volodymyr Zelenskyy, president of Ukraine, in an interview with Rai Italia.
Earlier, President Volodymyr Zelenskyy stated after the negotiations in Geneva that there has been progress on military issues, specifically regarding the monitoring of the ceasefire. However, on political matters such as territories, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, and other sensitive issues, the positions of the parties remain different. The next trilateral meeting between Ukraine, the U.S., and Russia was planned to take place between March 5th and 9th. Now, everything depends on events in the world, particularly the situation in the Middle East. The necessary signals regarding the new trilateral meeting with the U.S. and Russia have not yet been received because of the operation in Iran. This was stated by the president of Ukraine. According to Volodymyr Zelenskyy, as soon as the security situation and the overall political context allow for the continuation of trilateral diplomatic work, it'll be done. Ukraine is ready, the head of state assured.
We continue to communicate with America almost every day. Right now, because of the situation around Iran, there are no necessary signals for a trilateral meeting. But as soon as the security situation and the overall political context allow us to resume specifically trilateral diplomatic work, we will do it. Ukraine is ready for this. I am grateful to the intelligence service, to the office and all the relevant agencies for their efforts in organizing further prisoner exchanges. We are working to bring all our people home from Russian captivity